On July 10, 2026, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office released its fourth tranche under the Pursue Act, 40 files spanning nearly 8 decades, from 1948 to 2026, drawn from 5 agencies: the Pentagon, CIA, FBI, NASA, and the Department of Energy. This is the largest single batch since the rolling release mechanism was established, and arguably the most consequential. Not because it delivers a smoking gun. It doesn't. But because several of these files expose the precise seams where national security secrecy and public transparency grind against each other, and where the disclosure process itself may be structurally incapable of resolving the tension. Some context. The Pursue Act, signed into law as part of the fiscal year 2025 National Defense Authorization Act, mandated that AARO conduct a rolling release of historical UAP-related records across the intelligence community and defense agencies. Unlike the earlier UAP Disclosure Act championed by Senate Majority Leader Schumer, which was gutted in conference, Pursue avoided hard declassification deadlines. Instead, it established a review and release cadence, with AARO given discretion over timing, redaction scope, and sequencing. The first 3 tranches delivered a combined 61 files, mostly older cases. This fourth batch nearly matches that total in a single release. The volume alone signals acceleration. The question is whether acceleration equals substance. The headline case is Pantex. The Pantex plant near Amarillo, Texas, is the United States' primary nuclear weapons assembly and disassembly facility, one of the most sensitive sites in the national security apparatus. The newly released file details a series of UAP observations over and near Pantex across multiple years, with the most granular reporting covering incidents in the early 2000s. Sensor data referenced in the file includes radar tracks and infrared captures, though the imagery itself remains redacted. What's disclosed is striking enough. Objects demonstrating sustained loiter patterns over weapon storage areas, at altitudes and in configurations inconsistent with known drone platforms of that era. The file does not attribute the objects to any foreign adversary, domestic program, or known phenomenon. It simply classifies them as unresolved. Paired with the Pantex case is a 2015 DOE report documenting an incursion at an unspecified nuclear site. This file matters for a different reason: threat assessment methodology. The report explicitly frames the incursion in security terms, evaluating potential risks to nuclear material and facility operations. It references coordination with NNSA protective forces and acknowledges that the object was tracked on multiple sensor systems before departing the restricted airspace without interception. The threat language here is significant. This isn't speculative ufology.
This is a federal agency, in its own internal reporting, treating an unidentified object near nuclear weapons material as a credible security concern. That framing, bureaucratic, clinical, unsensational, may ultimately carry more weight than any dramatic footage ever could. Then there's the Indo-Pacific infrared video. According to the release summary, the footage was captured by a military platform operating in the Western Pacific and shows an object displaying 6 symmetrical infrared signatures arranged in a geometric pattern, described in analyst notes as a 6-pointed star configuration. The object was tracked for approximately 90 seconds before contact was lost. What makes this case analytically interesting is less the shape and more the sensor discussion embedded in the accompanying debrief notes. Analysts describe the challenge of classifying an object whose thermal signature doesn't correlate with known propulsion types. The infrared profile, they note, is inconsistent with jet exhaust, rocket plume, or conventional aerodynamic heating. No origin determination was reached. The range Fowler case adds another dimension: physical description. A metallic object entered a Navy testing range, triggering standard range Fowler protocols. The debrief, now partially released, describes the object as solid, reflective, lacking visible control surfaces or propulsion, and maintaining a stable flight path that interfered with scheduled weapons testing. The sensor methodology discussion in this file is arguably more valuable than the object description itself. It reveals how the Navy classifies unknowns in operational contexts. The default is presumed conventional intrusion until sensor data excludes known categories. In this case, exclusion was reached, and the object was logged as anomalous. That classification hierarchy, starting from the mundane and working outward, is exactly the kind of methodological transparency that serious analysts have been demanding for years. Now the structural problem. The Pursue Act's rolling release language contains no hard declassification deadline, no date by which all relevant files must be released, no penalty for indefinite delay, no independent review board with subpoena power, a key provision that was stripped from the Schumer-Rounds UAP Disclosure Act during the 2024 conference negotiations under pressure from House leadership aligned with defense industry interests. What remains is a process that depends entirely on AARO's institutional willingness and the executive branch's tolerance. Files are released when AARO determines they can be released. Redactions are applied at AARO's discretion. The cadence can accelerate, as it has. It can also stall. There is no mechanism forcing completion, and no definition of what complete would even mean. This is disclosure by permission, not by mandate. One underappreciated element of this tranche, the multi-agency spread.
40 files from 5 agencies spanning 78 years represents not just breadth, but institutional acknowledgement. The FBI files include early Cold War-era reports previously referenced in declassified memos but never released in full. NASA's contributions appear limited to observation logs and coordination memos with AARO. The CIA's files remain the most heavily redacted. But the simple fact that DOE, historically the most opaque agency on UAP matters, has contributed substantive case files, including the Pantex and Nuclear-Site materials, marks a genuine shift. Whether that shift holds under the next administration or the next AARO director is unknowable. 40 files is not full disclosure. It is a controlled release operating within boundaries set by the institutions being investigated. That's not cynicism, it's structural reality. But within those boundaries, this tranche delivers material that shifts the evidentiary baseline. Nuclear-Site Incursions documented by DOE itself. Sensor methodology debates that reveal how the military actually processes unknowns. Infrared footage that defies conventional classification. And a range Fowler case that shows the Navy's own internal logic arriving at anomalous after exhausting alternatives. The pursue process is real. It is producing records. It is not, however, producing accountability. Not yet. The distance between releasing files and answering for what they contain remains the central unresolved question of this entire disclosure era. Until a mechanism exists to close that gap, we are reading documents the government has chosen to share, on a timeline the government controls, with redactions the government applies. That is progress. It is not transparency. And understanding the difference may be the most important analytical task ahead.